they have.
Welcome to Windows on the World. We're live just outside Lytham St Annes, near sunny Blackpool, and we've been on the road with The Bigger Picture, our series of talks. I'm here with Rob from New Horizions in Lytham St Annes. We're just outside there. Where are we now, Rob? Hambleton. We've just driven
outside Poltonly Filed.
Potently filed.
Poltonly Filed.
That's for our international listeners, you see. We do get around. We were in Salford yesterday, in Manchester. We've had great turnouts and great responses from the talks that we do in The Bigger Picture. You can find out more about that on windowsontheworld.net. And if you'd like to book a talk, please do, because it's quite invigorating going out meeting people and also finding people's stories and the solutions that they may have. We're going to talk about quite a number of things tonight, but first of all I'm going to ask Rob what he thought of the talks and tell us a bit about New Horizons too. So first of all, tell us a bit about New Horizons, Rob.
Yeah, initially, before I came, it started in about 1996, more of a new agey venue, and kind of evolved into what it is today. We've been running it for about 8-9 years in its current manner, and we have a variety of speakers, all manner of subjects, eclectic range we like to think. It can cover lawful subjects, conspiracy theories, true or not, health subjects, UFO, the paranormal, and stuff like that.
Yeah, you have to sort of cater for everyone, really, don't you? I think when you're doing these sort of regular events, you have to make it a bit broad, you know.
Absolutely.
I mean, our talks tend to focus on stuff. It's like, in a way, you're sort of giving people the bad news, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like you have to get the facts out. I'm very conscious of research and fact-based information and try and keep it like that. It was very amusing today, actually, because this girl came up to me after and said, well, I'm really positive and you're really negative. And I thought, well, I suppose you could say that because that's the male-female binary thing, isn't it? I suppose, binary, yeah. Are we allowed to say binary
Of
anymore?
course.
I think so. But I think that was just a kind of exception, really. But I really enjoyed the talk and I got quite invigorated and carried away. I went off on some sidetrack issues, which I find amusing, basically like putting some anecdotal stuff in there. And that's the good thing about doing it live. I mean, I actually like to actually digress a bit here and there for the sake of amusement, and I actually went on for nearly 2 hours tonight, I think. Didn't I? But it was because the audience were very, very attentive, yep. And the energy was there. You can always tell when the energy's going, can't you? You know. But tell us a bit about the area we're in at the moment, because we have quite a lot of people listening in different countries. We're in the northwest of England.
Northwest of England.
Yeah.
Just down from the Preston New Road fracking site, where there's active protesters with a permanent base, which is good to see. And also, there's two areas actually that are permanent. One of them's called Maple Farm, and the owner there, whose business has been badly affected, has opened part of his farm for the protesters. It's covered in signs outside. And it's about 200 yards from the well site, which apparently is not doing that well at the moment because they keep setting earthquakes off, as you might have heard upon the news. They've had about 30 up to now. Some of them have been above the level where they have to stop fracking, but the little traffic light system that they have in place allows them to be stopped for only 18 hours, and then they can put it in gear and off they pop again. Their shareholders' price on the stock market has...
We're talking about Quadrilla now.
Quadrilla, yeah. Their shareholders' price has currently tanked somewhat, and that can only be a good thing for the people in the locality, because it's quite a populous area. There's about 340,000 people locally. And...
No, it's very interesting, this fracking issue, because one of the things that we cover is this kind of false opposition stuff, really. And when Occupy finished, a lot of those people who were actually took down Occupy went into a thing called Reclaim the Power and fracking. And it's interesting because I know people who are real activists there, and we have all identified the same people as being the false opposition. Is this something that you're aware of?
I am aware. I wouldn't like to name names, because I know a couple of them.
Yes. Well, so do we, you know. Yeah.
But yeah, I think these people can... They're opposition to a point. Some people might term them gatekeepers. I think some outside authorities have some leverage upon these people, whereby they kind of partially own their actions, and in doing so, these people maybe restrict others at the front line in various ways, just because of this leverage, almost like a blackmail, if you would.
Oh yeah, definitely, and that leads us into what we were going to talk about, because Piers has just been on the phone to one of our people on the ground, one of our reporters, and what we're going to talk about is something that Martin Houston has just dropped in. We talked about this last week. It's called Extinction Rebellion, which is basically the globalists who need anti-globalists use these people to reaffirm and to push their agenda. And this Extinction Rebellion came out of this latest SR15, which is the Intergovernmental Climate Change document, which says we have 12 years to save the world. So it shows that they're getting desperate to get in this agenda, the Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, everyone living in cities and being surveilled, and everybody on bikes or public transport. And so what they've done very cleverly is they've started off this false opposition group called Extinction Rebellion, which is the carbon copy template of all the other controlled opposition groups. And the thing about this globalist agenda is that most of it revolves around carbon copy template groups and carbon copy template ideas, which are just repeated over and over and over again. I find it incredibly tedious now, because having seen what happened to Occupy and beyond, and seen these fake groups being set up, and the same people going from one group to another, and of course all the people, the fake frackers, the fake people who are involved in these fracking protests, they're all now jumping on Extinction Rebellion. And I'm just going to return here to Piers. So Piers, did you glean any information about what happened yesterday from our man on the ground?
Yes. What's going on? I think... Yeah, sorry. Remember, last week we said that we were going to do a number of things to combat this Extinction Rebellion nonsense. So the first thing we did was we attended the IPCC Grantham Institute conference in number 1 Victoria Street, Westminster Conference Centre. And there we had tremendous fun. We had some exciting placards and banners, and we gave out a leaflet which goes through 6 key points which I've mentioned before.
Yes, that was Mr. Corbyn's phone going off as usual.
Which
shows you this is live, folks.
It was a message being left. We had great fun there, in a way. We had about 10 of us giving out leaflets, and the people in charge were so paranoid that they closed down the building and let some people of theirs in through the fire exit, then kept the others in a long queue. which gave us a perfect opportunity to leaflet every one of them. Of course, some of them were extremely hostile and didn't take the leaflets, but about a third or half of them did take the leaflets. We had a number of conversations with some of them, and they either indicated generally they were totally biased and not prepared to listen, or knew nothing. There were very few who engaged in any meaningful conversation at all. I mean, typical conversation was, I don't agree with you, and we would say things like, well, you must be aware that carbon dioxide levels follow temperatures, i.e. they're controlled by temperatures, and they're not controlling temperatures. And they said either, well, I'm not in charge of the facts, so I don't know, and therefore they're just operating in belief, or they would try and say that is somehow irrelevant. But we did get a lot of leaflets out, and some of these people on there certainly listened, and the public took our leaflets too. So that's what happened there. And then we also said we were going to turn up at this Extinction Rebellion event, which was scheduled to happen in Parliament Square. However, what actually happened was it didn't take place in Parliament Square. Instead, that was a decoy, which is probably all cooked up by the police and them anyway, who knows. But they blocked some bridges instead. So they took little crowds across bridges and then rushed across and blocked the whole bridge with insane banners going on about climate rebellion, or rather extinction
Fossil
rebellion.
fuel era over was one of the banners.
Oh, God. You see, it's so utter crap and nonsense. Now, what we achieved doing down there was we had a little group of people who were at Westminster Bridge expecting something to happen in Parliament Square, which didn't. But then they realised, well, they turned round and they saw Westminster Bridge being blocked. So they went amongst these people with our leaflets, saying there's leaflets about climate change. So without knowing it, these people on the demonstration took away our leaflets and put them in their pockets. They're going to read them later and realise that we are completely attacking their project, which was, I should perhaps read out. Would that be useful if I read out the 6 key points on our leaflet? And these will be available on the weatheraction.com website and windowsontheworld.net website. We had a 6-point document, which is the big headline is BBC, Al Gore and the UN are challenged to debate and provide real data evidence of the CO2 climate story. So number one, the CO2 story is a new WMD, a new weapon of mass destruction, as the United Nations had falsely claimed was in the hands of the Iraq dictator and was justified for the Iraq war. And this is just a new UN story. And it's amazing how people who are aware of the WMD lie but still believe in the climate lie from the same source, you know. I mean, liars are always liars, I think one should know. Secondly, the key point we're saying is point 2 on this list of 6 is the UN, Al Gore and the BBC must admit that the CO2 story is false, or provide us real data evidence of a rebuttal, and they've got till December the 1st to do that. Third point is that the ClimateGate scandal lives on, and that's a disgrace to science. The ClimateGate scandal was about 10 years ago when the Climate Research Unit of East Anglia was exposed as having internal emails which said we've got to hide the decline, meaning hide the decline in temperatures of some data sets they've got since the medieval warm period. And this fraud is continuing, and they admit that they changed the temperatures, and they say they're doing it to homogenise data. It's fraud and fraud and fraud. And if you go on weatheraction.com and Windows on the World, you can get the links directly to the presentations I've given on this, which were repeated at the meetings you just mentioned.
Yes, we actually had some banners made.
Oh, we did.
And these banners are great, and placards. Yeah. And we put them on the side of the building, and I think a Remainer, or maybe it was somebody who didn't like climate change denial, pulled them down, and we had to put them back up again, didn't we?
Indeed.
Oh, unless it was mischievous children, and it could be mischievous
Who
children.
knows?
Actually,
but I would
thing.
say that the response from the public was interesting. They weren't oppositionists, generally speaking, which is the climate of indulgence on this matter is better for us now than it has been over the last few years. So the message is getting through, at least slowly. Anyway, going through these points, the fourth point was the global warming hoax is driving green genocide. And this is really important for people who think that they're saving the planet. Actually, what's happening is they're promoting fuel poverty, which the World Health Organization says is killing millions of people a year, either directly from cold or more, especially from health issues arising from the smoke they're inhaling from open fires, or the fact they get cold and therefore get illnesses, and so forth. The fifth point is the global warming story is a political operation, not about science and environment, and that is a point admitted by the UN IPCC chief Ottmar Edenhofer, who said quite clearly a few years ago, and they don't deny any of this now, I'll quote him, he said, "One must say clearly that we redistribute de facto the world's wealth by climate policy. One has to free oneself from the illusion that international climate policy is environmental policy. This has almost nothing to do with environmental policy anymore." And he said that years ago. And it's even truer now. So all these people prancing around on the bridge are, in the name of saving the planet, are actually being manipulated by the biggest operations in the world. Because the IPCC is fundamentally backed by Wall Street and all the rip-off organisations which make loads of money from the fake green projects going around, such as damming of the Amazon basin and so forth. And the last point we make on this is carbon dioxide is the gas of life, and this was one of our posters, was explicitly that. And then we say the world needs more, not less, because if you have more carbon dioxide, plants grow faster, and this is good for the environment. Well, it is good for the environment because it's good for plants.
That's absolutely correct. Good information there, and information that we reiterate quite often. The show, or the little video that we made of our day of protest, which was actually endorsed by the manager of the building, unlike the people who glued themselves to the building a couple of days before.
Well, that's right. They were reasonable in the building. Yeah, they were.
He came out and said, "No, you're okay to be out here." That actual video is called Globalist Warming Hoax Day, because it is globalist warming, isn't it? That's the main thing to remember about it. And they're relying on the IPCC SR15 document, which is an absolute joke. It's probably their worst one so far, because it doesn't contain any facts. In actual fact, none of the IPCC documents contain any facts. They produce rhetoric, which is all about mitigation. So they always state models and projections show this may happen. Well, anything may happen. However, their track record has not been very good, has it, Piers?
No. Well, the first problem they have is that carbon dioxide levels follow temperatures, not the other way around. So there's no evidence whatsoever in any real data for their claims. So we're demanding they produce, which they won't, they can't. So therefore they ignore us or are rude to us. The second thing is, of course, there's a whole list of propositions they made. Like we'd have runaway global warming, we'd have the end of snow, we'd have more hurricanes in America, and every one of their claims have failed. So rather than admit under normal science that therefore they failed, they have changed the data to make it look warmer now than it actually is. And this is a monstrous travesty of science. And of course we wanted to have we will have a report back discussion on this on the 20th of December. The challenge we've put out to the BBC, Al Gore and the UN, we will wait for their response, and we'll have a meeting which will undoubtedly have empty chairs in. Although anyone who wants to come and speak in the name of man-made climate change can come, and we'll give them time. We'll give them time to put their case. unlike the way they treat us, but will give time to put their case. We've arranged to have this meeting on the 20th of December, and as we said before, we had booked a meeting placed in the Royal Institution. This is Michael Faraday's Royal Institution, i.e. built in his memory of his discovery of electromagnetic motor effects and the ability to make electric motors and so forth. We booked it, we went to the place and explained to them what we want to do, including have a physical demonstration of the failure of the CO2 story. And the Royal Institution at Christmas time has these Christmas lectures, but they have physics demonstrations. So this was perfect. They gave us the time, booking, everything. However, when they discovered what we were up to, they phoned us up and said, you can't have the meeting anymore. Now this, and we asked them why, and they said, oh, you're against our principles. And Philip Foster, who was doing this arrangements, asked why, and he said, oh, it's against the principles. So he said, all right, I'll read the principles. So he read the principles, and the principles don't say anything which would deny us. In fact, principles are they believe in the scientific experimental science, and that will encourage and support genuine investigative science of all sorts. So they're going completely against their own principles, and they were asked why, and they said, oh, our investors, funders, supporters, whatever, for some phrase like that, have said no. So you see, instead of following their principles, they seem like they're being forced to not follow their principles in the name of the false man-made climate change agenda. Now, this is an utter disgrace to the Royal Institution, and Michael Faraday must be rolling in his grave.
The thing about this...
we will have the meeting somewhere else, by the way.
It depends on the public going along with it. And what this Extinction Rebellion protest is about, I've just been reading about it, it was what was expected. They lay in the road, stopped traffic, etc., walked around with banners, and they were instructed where to go, and they did it. But they're meant to be rebelling. I thought rebellion was about doing your own thing, not being told where to go. However, there was somebody on LBC talking about it with Benny Pizer from the Global Warming Policy Foundation. And he was set up as the opposition to this 21-year-old who has been on the planet for 21 years, and as we know, we're talking about 60-year cycles here, really, aren't we? So he hasn't seen those yet. And he was stating everything that the IPCC had told him to say. Now, this is a real problem, isn't it? Because this is part of the fake news and post-truth world. Now, let's bring Rob back into the conversation, because we're up in the northwest of England, and we're going to be here for 2 days, actually. We're here today and tomorrow. I'm going to be talking about different aspects of Windows on the World. In fact, the stuff that started us off with the law, and there seems to be a lot of interest in that, and basically administrative law, what we are in the system and all that sort of thing. What I'm going to do now is ask Rob what actually woke him up to what was going on properly.
Excellent question, that, Mark. Initially, it was health subjects. After having hay fever, it's a little bit lightweight this, but having hay fever as a kid and into my 20s, I found a book on by Dr. Richard McCarness, which wasn't actually complete. I found it in an old car. So I read this book, and it talked about foods and either positive or negative health effects associated with them. Long story short, I changed my diet, I took some vitamin supplements, and I increased my hydration, and my hay fever left, and it never came back. I also experienced higher energy levels. I've since increased that as my knowledge increased, and I've cut down on my carbs, for instance, and eat more high fat, high meat, and my energy has increased even more.
So it's low carbs.
Low carbs. This is for me. It doesn't suit everybody.
Yeah.
It suits me absolutely fine. And I think it's important to look after oneself as you get a little bit older. I'm 62 now, and it keeps me slim, it keeps me fit. I work as a builder. I also train pretty hard at the gym. Little bit of vanity in there, I fully admit that. And being vigilant with my diet is very important to me, because I've looked into this, and some of the stuff some of the information I was getting, for instance, from the doctors regarding health stuff, made me less and less and less impressed with mainstream information. I started looking a little bit further. I sometimes had chance meetings with people who talked upon conspiracy theories, lawful stuff, and then you have major events that turns up within your lifetime, such as 9/11 and 7/7. Then you watch films by Nick Kolstrom, Mind the Gap. You look at things like the work of Dr. Judy Wood and Andrew Johnson and the like on the 9/11, which absolutely, the only conspiracy with that is the official story. I think that's the conspiracy theory, personally. I may be proved wrong. I'm waiting.
Very good points there. Yeah, it's interesting actually, because you've got quite a down-to-earth, well-rounded group of people there. I mean, these sort of meetings often do attract people who the general public would see as slightly crazy, because people get very obsessive about this sort of thing, don't they? And everyone has their own sort of avenues they go down. But the idea of what we're doing, the bigger picture, I just wanted to get your response really to what you thought about it, because we did a presentation with 3 different speakers over a long period of time. It was, over 6 hours really, and the audience stayed attentive. This was a different sort of event than you normally put on, because it's normally a Monday night, people come down after work or whatever, so they had to make the commitment to be there in the daytime. Now the one in Salford we did was great, but we actually got, the audience seemed more attentive and interested in a way at this talk, and that was great, because that spurred me on, because they were kind of, there was a sort of symbiotic sort of energy going on, which we did get that in Salford, but this group seems to be very sort of proactive, and that was interesting, because people were asking questions, especially about tomorrow's talk as well, because everyone's interested in that aspect of it. But what did you personally think about the information that was put across? Was it clear?
Absolutely.
Was it good? Yeah,
absolutely.
Just give us your impression, Rob.
Yeah, absolutely. First-rate information, that proper scientific stuff, put over in a way that people could understand, devoid of bull manure, and it's something that I actually, many years ago, about 4 years ago, I gave a small, somewhat watered-down compared to what you lads did, talk on the CO2 issue, and based a fair amount on a website called ilovemyco2.com.
Oh, right.
And it impressed one or two, and it annoyed one or two others. And when I hear a far better, more in-depth talk, as was delivered today, mightily impressed. I actually overheard more than one person saying today that was the best fiver they've spent in a long time. That wasn't prompted, I just overheard it. So, yeah, thank you very much, lads. And Sandy. Sandy's nipped off now, and she's not a lad. But that was an absolutely brilliant event. I was absolutely riveted. And the thing is that people turned up, and they stayed. All of them stayed. Nobody went. Nobody left early, even though it overrun.
That's true.
Yeah, I think the thing is with this is I put a lot of information into I'm talking about my particular talk now. Piers is information packed as well, and so Sandy's. So there's a lot to take in, and mine's quite rapid fire when I get going. But I do try and reiterate the points, because basically we're talking about a management system, a management concept. So let's think of it as a corporation running a business, and going into that with that kind of angle is quite helpful, because even the esoteric subjects, such as the things I was talking about, like the birth of the new age, how that ties in to the climate change agenda. I go into the people who brought that in, why it was brought in through the UN, and basically take away a lot of the gobbledygook, which is all of this esoteric stuff, which a lot of people get very bogged down in.
The Gaia worship.
Yes, and actually keeping it very simple. But a few quotes from these people tells you an awful lot, and then you can sort of move on. Then I went into Freemasonry and the belief in the sons of Cain and how this basically brings in this Luciferian agenda. We've covered that in A Cult That Rules the World. That's a really interesting show to listen to. But I also quote people like Manly P. Hall, who was made a 33-degree Freemason by Freemasons because he knew more about Freemasonry than they did in certain respects, but also very ahead of his time as to this agenda. In other words, he was saying this self-empowerment, sort of narcissistic kind of New Age type thinking was a new form of black magic. And it's incredibly important, this, because a lot of this stuff is being done without implied consent. In other words, it's like a blood bond. In other words, you're signing your soul away. And this is what the whole of the legal system does. And this is what is needed. They need our consent. They, who's they? Okay, let's call them the globalists. Let's call them the unstructured government, because we know that the people who we vote for are not the true government, even though they can possibly affect some kind of change. However, what we're led into is all the things that we're talking about, the Hegelian dialectic, and we talked about this earlier on. Now, I was using the Hegelian thing as a template for what's going on. So in other words, I'm not actually stating that Hegel's beliefs are what this is about. It's the idea that you've got this thesis, antithesis, which creates this synthesis. So you could have fake far left, fake far right. The synthesis to that is political correctness. It's a false synthesis, but it's imposed, you see. So this kind of simplifying things to this extent is quite important, and maybe people find that a bit cerebral. That's a roundabout way of asking you whether you grasped all that to start with.
Yeah. And regarding secret societies, JFK highlighted secret societies and their input in the world, and as well, along with the financial, he wished the Americans to print their own money. He didn't last very long after that. So the societies who are behind the politicians, especially in a live event such as this, you're highlighting this fact, and I notice a lot of people talking amongst themselves. This is something that you notice at a live event. It's much better than sitting in your front room, in front of your computer. You can do that any night of the week, but if you go to a live event, this is where you can network with other people, speak to people that you've never met before, just generally meet fascinating people.
That's the whole point, really, because I came up here a couple of years ago to New Horizons, and it was with Kevin Boyle. And Kevin was thinking of starting a party, the Heresy Party, because a heretic just means someone who's able to choose, someone who's able to choose. And that's a big part of what we're talking about. Now, Kevin decided not to do this as a political party, because what we ran into was the Electoral Commission and basically the registration of the party. They make you jump through all these hoops. It's incredibly frustrating, and actually the regulation of the whole thing makes it actually quite pointless in some ways. So I think a lot of this stuff is about unstructured groups, and that's my biggest kind of aim with all this. In other words, that people will not be they can be affiliated to groups, but there's no group identity, and that makes it incredibly difficult to stop. And that's where I think the fun is, really, because nobody knows really what the group's aim is or what it's really about. I mean, I think the thing is with this as well, it's also useful when you get together with a group of people, you have one unified aim, because all of these fake protest groups, they steer things in a different direction. So in other words, Occupy was all about the financial system, then they turned it into their climate change agenda. It's very, very simple, and Yuri Bezmenov said this, and I say this in a talk, that you don't need tanks to roll into a country to take it over. You can do it in 15 to 20 years by planting your change agents in that country and taking it over. It's called ideological subversion, and that is the most powerful way to take over a country. So you demoralise it, you destabilise it, you create a crisis, and then there's normalisation. And I use that in the talks because I think we are in a period of destabilisation. A crisis can happen anytime, and a crisis can be anything. But we are being ideologically subverted. I mean, I couldn't believe it today. We were talking in the car, and I wasn't quite aware that there are now 39 genders in New York. I mean, I didn't know this. It's probably a good job
you
that
didn't
I did.
know this.
I didn't
You're
know
just
it.
not politically correct, Mr.
I'm not politically correct.
You're
I'm totally and
miles
utterly
behind
ignorant. I've been burying my head in books and learning far too many things. I should be concentrating on trivia, and I'm not. And I'm sorry about that.
This is pro-mode among children, though.
Yeah.
And that's not right.
No, it's not, Rob. I mean, I'm trivialising it to an extent because I think we should. But it's about creating instability. And in actual fact, it does create mental illness, this stuff, because it's all about identity and the shadow self and all this sort of stuff, this psychosynthesis. A lot of this stuff is really come out of psychology, and I put that in the talk as well. The psychological society, the most neurotic society ever. And this came out of a book by Martin L. Gross, which came out in about 1979. And it's absolutely amazing and very prophetic. I do think that's a good thing, putting things in that are prophetic and that have come true. And that even goes into the Rio Earth Summit of 92 when nothing happened but the country signed up for the climate change agenda. It was brought in with executive orders in America. People don't know that. They say it's non-binding. It's absolutely binding because I can see the wave and round here.
Treaty.
Yes, it is. And it's been re-engineered round here. I mean, 20 miles per hour zones where you don't need them. It's just little things on the way back that you're starting to see. And you're starting to see the 40-foot pavements coming in, aren't you? And all that. And basically, it's not as prevalent up here because you've got a kind of infrastructure that's already there. It's a typically kind of spaced out sort of place, as in the properties.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of room here, so you're not talking about the density of London, so you don't see the changes here. But in Manchester, it's exactly the same as London. You've got cranes everywhere. They're building this high density housing and they're pushing people into smaller and smaller spaces, which is going to create more tension, more problems, more mental illness, because there's a thing called defendable space and you need a bit of space around you. And once this starts encroaching, I've noticed this where I used to live, you've got far too much stuff around you. They're building flats everywhere, but there's actually no real space anymore. Some of this stuff is getting turned over, which is quite good. And this is the whole point of the purpose of the talks, is that people can get together in their local area and start having a go at these people with their noses in the trough who don't want to be caught with their noses in the trough. Well, make sure you catch them with their noses in the trough and they do back off. We had this with this development in Leytonstone. You can hear that. In fact, it's called London's Dystopia, Public Winning Fight Back. It was the first thing we put out on Spreaker. And everything else we've put out on Spreaker's had thousands and thousands of hits. That one hasn't, but do listen to it because there's very important people talking in that. And those people have had a huge effect on taking down what is happening. So this is not some monolith that can just keep rolling. It's something that can be interrupted. And to me, that's where the fun is, because if you're not proactive in something, it's very, very depressing, isn't it, Rob?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
there's two town-sized developments being constructed around here. One at the back of Lytham St Annes, and one at the end of the M55 motorway. The one at the end of the M55 motorway basically is another town, and the other one is 1,200 houses, which is kind of small town size. And just round the corner from here, bearing in mind this is a village. There's two plans, one for the first phase is 165 houses, followed by another possible 160 houses, on top of the probably 80 or 90 houses they've already built down the road, in a village with one A road running through the middle of it, which is quite thin, and an antiquated drain system and no infrastructure.
This is absolutely typical.
Yeah. What about the size of dwellings? Room sizes, what are they going to be?
Must admit, I've not seen any. I've
You
not
should
seen
have a
any
look,
of the
'cause
plans.
Basically, they're always smaller now. Under Agenda 21 sort of plans, they're always very small.
Yeah, I suppose if you go and have a look at a show home on a new building site, and you could you might have to get a schematic of the drawing, or if you went round and had a look, just bang your tape measure on it, and compare that to the room size of a house from the 50s or 60s.
Yeah, because all these social cleansing regeneration schemes in London, they're
very exciting packed now as well. The house, you've got a metre in between.
Smaller and smaller and smaller.
Absolutely correct, that is. I mean, this is interesting though. So it's a template that's rolled out all over the country. It doesn't matter where you go. And as you're saying, they're overbuilding in villages. Yeah. This is, I mean, people who listen to this show, they've all seen this. In fact, Martin, who's listening tonight, he's moved to the Isle of Man now because he had a development built right on his doorstep.
Wow.
And that was up in Bedfordshire, I think. Now, the thing is, we've covered this in great detail. Britain's Villages Destroyed, ? Is one of our shows. And so this is the urbanisation agenda is also about destroying village life. Now, what they're doing is they're bringing in a lot of people who are causing friction in villages, and I'm hearing this all over the place. Now, it's not their people's fault that they've been put there, but they've been cleansed out from large housing estates which are going to be sold off, and they're putting these people into these places. Now, part of it is the displacement of the population because they're mixing everybody up. In other words, if you've got people in your area and you don't know them, then everyone is isolated, so you can't get what they call communities together to do anything. One of the ways that they infiltrate is that they make sure that their agents are in there before they start all this stuff, and the consultations are completely fake. We talked about that today. I mean, Eric Von Essex, who listens to the show, he knows all about this. He was an architect, and he talks about what's happening up in Hertfordshire, and it's just a template. And what they did up there, they rolled it out with a fake consultation. They identified all the useful idiots that they wanted on their side, and they used them. And so this is an absurd situation because people pay council tax and they think they're paying the council to serve them in some way. And they're not anymore. It's the liabilities are being removed, and these mega regions for councils are being formed. They've got them here. You know, I've looked. If you look it up, and you look how many councils are joining together to mega regions. Sorry, carry on.
And they've changed in a lot of places. They've actually changed the style of councils, shall we say, from borough councils to either metropolitan borough councils or just councils. Now, if you change your name, you've changed its legal entity, surely.
Yes.
Some lads from down the Wigan area at the Ashton meet, which talk on lawful stuff, have highlighted Wigan Council being changed from previously to Wigan Borough Council, Wigan Metropolitan Borough Council, and they can't figure out the entity at all. And there's also things with pension funds being absorbed into Greater Manchester. Absolutely millions housed and locked into these pension funds around the Greater Manchester area. I dare say it might happen around here because they've changed Wyre Borough Council to Wyre Council, and they've re-liveried all the wagons.
Are they different areas for electing?
No, it's the same area.
The same area.
They've just altered.
But it's expanded in some way, so the
they've expanded. We're now potently filed. Didn't used to be potently filed.
Okay.
We're now potently filed. I think we may have always been. I've not been. I'm from Blackpool originally.
Right.
I've been here about 10 years, so I probably historically can't comment very accurately.
See, I think changing these boundaries, well, it makes to people becoming alienated from the whole system. So you get the voting for councillors decreases. You seem to get more and more imported councillors who are, really not products of the area they're meant to be representing, but more interested in climbing some greasy pole, you see.
Yeah.
So these operations, as Mark has pointed out in previous talks, is to make these local government less and less accountable and more open to these impositions in the name of, Agenda 21 and so forth. And people should understand very clearly that the Agenda 21 making buildings smaller and rooms smaller is part and parcel connected to the climate change agenda, because everywhere they go, they talk about sustainability, and they justify loads of things in the terms of
they just keep redefining what sustainability is, don't they?
Yes, but it's always connected with the CO2 story, which is a complete lie. And Mark read out today the 17 points of Agenda 2030.
That was actually Sandi.
Sandi.
Those are interesting.
And at least 8 of those are explicitly, directly consequences of the man-made climate change false story.
This is why the Extinction Rebellion fake protest has been put into place, because the IPCC are losing ground. That's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is not a scientific body. Now, you've got these 20-year-olds who've joined the Extinction Rebellion who are saying that this is basically the word of God, as though it's written in the Bible. And it's just a load of speculation, models and projections, which anybody can see through.
It's just falsity.
Absolutely.
They know it's lies. Those people know it's lies, apart from some brain-dead number of... Well, I don't believe any honest scientist believes in this stuff at all. Some of them say they believe in it because there's money there.
Yes. Well, it's very depressing for me seeing this template rolled out again and again and again and again, and it's always the same. This is one of the reasons we're doing these talks, because I like to bring this up, because I haven't heard that many people talking about it. People know about this stuff. We had Frances Leader on last week, who's brilliant on this, because Frances has been at protests for years and years and years, so she's trying to advise people to have nothing to do with this and what it's all about. But of course, they're doing it through social media. It's a very, very hard work, and not something that I'd want to be doing now. But just to maybe finish off this section of the show, and maybe this show tonight, because we've been out all day and we haven't had anything to eat yet, and I think we've got a curry waiting in the wings somewhere.
We have. It's warming up.
Yes, I'm going to ask Piers something, and Piers can round up the show, because I've been talking enough today, I think. But this is
no, Mark, you've never been talking enough.
Well, I'm quiet for long periods of time, believe it or not. Often weeks on end, actually.
I don't believe it.
Okay, mini ice age looms as NASA scientist warns lack of sunspots could bring record cold. Our sun was not expected to head into a solar minimum until around 2020, but it appears to be heading in that direction a little early, which could prove to be bad news for warm weather lovers and indeed the whole climate change extinction rebellion. What have you got to say about that, Mr. Corbyn?
It is really interesting that this has come out from NASA. Point one is, it's corroboration of what we warned of 10 years ago, i.e. that this process of moving into a new minimum solar activity period and very cold weather would happen from now and before now, and they're corroborating that. And you ask yourself, why is this coming out now from NASA? Because you see, they've been observing stuff for years, and I've been invited to things in America, and then they've been blocked by essentially the Obama administration. Now that Donald Trump is in charge, I think we know he's cleaned out certain climate change liars from key administrative positions, and now NASA is becoming a lot more actually scientific. So they're actually reporting on actual data, and it is wonderful, not just because it's corroborating us, they're actually becoming a real scientific operation, which could mean that we can help save lives by giving long-range forecasts instead of them being suppressed. And I think there's a number of things follow from what's been said. We could win the war on climate change. Now that will be the end of a whole lot of things. The Agenda 21.
Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and all of this globalist stuff falls apart because they've put all their eggs in one basket. There is no way out of this if climate change is proved to be the hoax that it is. And I say a hoax because it is in effect a hoax. However, we're not disputing that the climate changes. This is the really strange thing. They call us climate change deniers. Don't they, Peter?
They do call us climate change.
We had this. This is from the Green Gathering.
Yeah. Well, we don't deny climate change because it's always been happening, but it's not caused by CO2. And I think since the topic of the moment is the European Union and Brexit, we have to understand that the European Union promotes the man-made climate change story 24/7 because and that helps hold together the European Union. Now, the logic of all this is we've got to have Brexit now, and including a no-deal Brexit, because what Theresa May is putting forward is unbelievably worse than the consequences of a no-deal Brexit. So the best deal around now is a no-deal Brexit, and that would hopefully end the impositions by the European Emission Trading Scheme, which enables big corporations to destroy industry in the United Kingdom. That's one thing. Secondly, if we have a no-deal Brexit, it means the United Kingdom keeps the fish around Britain instead of it currently being stolen by the European Union. So I'm totally for Brexit now under no deal. And of course, the reason for Extinction Rebellion now is all part of defending this whole raft of false narratives. They have three false narratives going together. The man-made climate change is real, that's one. The European Union is happy, clappy and great for everybody is two. And thirdly, Donald Trump is evil. Now, you can have disagreements with Donald Trump, but the point is they use him to buttress their other two beliefs. So they got this raft of false ideology. Like when we say we don't believe in man-made climate change, then they say, oh, so you believe in Donald Trump then, do you? Well, hang on, Donald Trump agrees with us. Or they say, if you don't like the European Union, oh, so you mean you don't want these impositions to save the planet which come from the European Union? Well, no, I don't. But you see, they draw these three things together in a raft of false narrative, and we have to destroy that raft of false narrative by one way is exposing the man-made climate change story.
Absolutely.
The Pope out as well for
Yeah.
that, didn't they, to promote that?
Of course,
Yeah.
because the universal church is globalist. It has to
Yeah.
be globalist by definition.
And we're going to talk more about this stuff tomorrow, including the CO2 stuff.
Absolutely, at New Horizons in Lytham St Annes. Look it up, the New Horizons website. I'm with Rob from New Horizons here. And just to finish off, Rob, I'm going to give you the last word here, or maybe the last word, because we've got 10 minutes to go yet.
Oh.
But we were banned from the Green Gathering. Have you heard of the Green Gathering?
I have, yeah.
Yes, we were banned from there.
I saw you and
saw
Piers
it.
outside all these tents and everything.
That's right. That was at a different
But that was a
festival.
different
Was that-
gathering.
Oh my God, that's another one, is it?
No, we weren't
no.
banned from there.
All right.
Piers
We
was
were-
speaking there.
I see, right,
That was
right.
a small festival, you
Yeah.
see. That was called the Harlequin Festival, which
I
is
see.
up in Norfolk.
Yeah.
And that's a small festival which is not regulated. So, in other words, the tent there was not being policed by
We've been in
these
four other
eco-fascists.
festivals,
Yeah.
which
That's
haven't banned
right.
us and welcomed us even.
But basically, they accused us of climate change denial and conspiracy theories. And they went on to say, while Piers' position is well documented, it is regarded as a particularly minority view in comparison with the consensus of the IPCC and the scientific community. Well, it is in comparison with the consensus of the IPCC, but certainly not the scientific community, whatever they mean by that. And then they went on to say, Mark's views clearly lack academic rigour and neither appropriate education. So
In
because
what
I say...
manner?
Because I say
what
2 and
manner?
2 is not 5, I have not
Really?
been educated, basically. This is what they're saying. What they're doing is they're saying, oh, well, he hasn't got a degree like us. Well, they may have degrees,
Well, a
but
lot
these
of them haven't
people
got
have not
degrees
critical
either.
thinking. And what we were talking about today is the ability to actually think critically, which comes from logic, grammar and rhetoric, having an argument, being able to express that argument. These people can't express anything. And the thing is that there's a lot of them, and they're this middle sort of management that's put into place to actually keep the truth from getting out there. And if things are getting colder, as indeed they seem to be, and we're going to go into a mini ice age, it kind of destroys the whole thing. However, because there's so much involved in this, the whole of this global infrastructure revolves around there being a fear of climate change. So this is incredibly interesting. So the revolutionary act now is to say that the global warming hoax is over and we're going to turn it over. So what the anti-globalists are doing on behalf of the globalists is reinforcing the globalist idea. And we're saying, no, we're the rebellion. we're the real rebellion. Somebody put into chat, Piers, I don't know what you want to address this, about the extinction of species. Now, the thing is that this is not particularly to do with climate change and global warming, is it?
No. Well, species have always been extincting, coming and going for millions and millions of years. So there's nothing new, and there's no acceleration of extinction of species. They make these claims which are based on nothing. They were telling us that polar bears were going to die out and face severe problems. That isn't true. We've actually got a ever increasing number of polar bears, which in some places are now regarded as severely dangerous. So they're going to have hunts of polar bears because their numbers are going to be out of control, and they'll start eating people, you see. Now, when polar bears do start being hunted, I don't know what these green people are going to say. Other things they talk about is, well, any sorts of extinctions. But you see, they themselves are certainly promoting things which are smashing up wildlife. For example, one of these green agenda things, which is operated to make money, is the damming of the Amazon basin. Now, that will kill massive amounts of wildlife, and possibly, because there are rare species in the Amazon, wipe out thousands of species in one go. And this is to save the planet, they say, to make electricity, but it will destroy nature, destroy tribes, and actually make more methane and CO2 than the so-called climate change CO2 that they are pretending they want to solve. It's a money-making scam and theft of natural resources. That is what the European Union and the Agenda 21 is about. So I repeat, Brexit now.
Yes. The other thing is that these Extinction Rebellion people aren't protesting against 5G. They're kind of embracing the whole thing, which is incredibly stupid. So we are going to see extinction of species with this because it's totally untested. We haven't got time to go into that. It's 2156 now.
Destroyed from 5G.
Well, this is the whole thing about electromagnetic frequencies and radiation, and they're not addressing that at all. They're just saying it's all to do with the weather, and we've got 12 years to live. Well, this is a bit.
Well, they say this every 5 years. They say this.
You see, the thing is
none of that.
Yeah, they need an apocalypse. You see, there has to be an apocalypse. A religion cannot. An apocalypse.
Judgment Day is coming.
Correct.
The end is nigh.
I've never seen you preaching like that.
Oh, the end is nigh.
I think you're looking forward to your vegetarian curry now, aren't you?
I am actually.
Yes.
The end is nigh.
Well, the end is nigh.
I'm more politically correct than you, Mr. Windows, because I'm eating vegetarian curry and you're having some type of meat, aren't you?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, what we could do, yeah. Well, what we could do is
Rob?
we could decide.
Me, duck.
Quack, 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 quack.
Yes. Okay, so that's nearly it from us
God
tonight.
Save the duck.
Somebody has said in chat, I thought you were doing a 2-hour show. I think we're probably going to do a 1-hour show because I'm slightly burned out here.
I'm never burned out.
Well, you do it then.
No. We need you to press the buttons and I can't do that.
That's it, polar bear curry, someone said.
Hey, that could catch on because they're big and beefy.
I like that. If people
you could have polar bear farming. Think of that.
Absolutely.
You could throw them bits of meat.
That made me laugh.
And they could eat them. Or you could have a fish farm in Wales, in Scotland, that makes salmon, and they chuck it to the polar bears, and then you eat the polar bears, and you could have a really big industry in Greenland. You fly there to get cold polar bear stew. Imagine, I wouldn't do it because I'm more or less a veggie. You know.
Absolutely.
It's just an idea. It's a business idea.
It's a business model, and everything about this is a business plan. So it's nothing personal, it's just business. So we're going to actually disappear off. We've got a great talk tomorrow, and we are recording them. So we're going to actually learn from them and move on and go into different areas of what we're talking about, because all of the stuff that's in these talks is available in much longer form on windowsontheworld.net. Our shows are incredibly broad and we go into great detail. We haven't a bit of a night off tonight. So I'm going to give Rob the last word. So it's Rob from New Horizons. What would you like to say before we leave?
Well, tomorrow night's talk with Mark and Piers starts at 8 o'clock. It'll run till probably 10:15, or, well, knowing them, it might run a bit longer than that. Doors open 7:30, £3 in. Eat as many biscuits as you want. They're not good for you, but there you go. Drink as many brews as you want. It's still only £3. Do support live events no matter where you are. You never know.
How do people find out where it is?
Pardon?
Where is it?
Oh, yeah, it's St Albans Road, St Annes on Sea, right next to the YMCA, just down the road from sunny Blackpool.
That's great. What's your website, Rob?
It's newhorizonsstannes.com. You can view previous speakers, present speakers, to get a gauge of what goes on. And
newhorizonsstannes.com.
Yeah,
is that A-N-N-E-S?
Pardon?
A-N-N-E-S.
It is, yeah.
It's one word.
One word, all one word.
newhorizonsstannes.com.
Yeah, so do support live events. You never know who you're going to meet in the audience, speakers. It actually teases you out of your front room, out of your house. You can stay in your house and you can get all the entertainment you want on another night.
Very good point there, Rob. I mean, I think we need to get back to this. We need to get back to getting out and about and interacting, because I know it makes sense, because I've had a very good day and a very good couple of days. That's it from Windows on the World. We'll see you at 9 p.m. next Sunday. We'll have a lot of news, because lots of stuff has been coming in. I've been getting loads of people contacting me through the website with some very interesting stuff, and there is a lot of crime farming going about. So I'm going to be talking about that amongst other things tomorrow. Thanks for listening to Windows on the World, and see you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.